So let us look at this GS paper 3 today about economy, environment, then disaster management, and science and technology, and internal security. So what are the basic observations? As usual, when it came to economy, all the questions are from only three topics. One is inclusive growth, second one is agriculture, third one is infrastructure. And all the questions again can be directly answered from only economic survey. You don't require anything else to answer all these questions. They can be directly answered from economic survey. Next thing is that all those questions are only related to current events, and current events also mostly the recent events only. Same is the case with other topics also, whereas internal security or disaster management or science and technology or environment. The paper is predictable, and if you are thorough with all the current events, you should be able to do very well. Let us look at the questions, starting with the first question. Examine the pattern and the trend of public expenditure on social services in the post-reform period in India. To what extent this has been in consonance with achieving the objectives of inclusive growth. As we have mentioned in the beginning itself, every year there will be a good number of questions on inclusive growth. This question is slightly good also, analytical. It says that after India had opted for LPG 1991, how the pattern as well as the trend of public expenditure on social services has changed from 1991 till 2024 in the last 33 years. And is it in consonance with achieving the objectives of inclusive growth? So the question is both requires both knowledge of facts as well as analysis. So what do we say here? If you look at 1991, when we have opted for LPG, what you can see here is that the immediate objective of the government was to reduce fiscal deficits and revenue deficits. Why? Because we had taken loans from IMF and World Bank. Some of the conditions that this IMF and World Bank had put was to reduce the deficits. Some of those conditions were to reduce the deficits. That was the reason why the expenditure on social sector, education and health, and poverty alleviation, on social sector, it has come down in those days. Initially, it has come down on education, health, and poverty alleviation. You can say employment, all of them. Why? Because the objective was to reduce the deficits, revenue deficits and fiscal deficits, because we had taken loans and we were under compulsion to reduce those deficits. Then what happened? And 1998, this NDA government came to power. After NDA government came to power, the focus was more on infrastructure spending. From 1998 to 2004, the focus was more on infrastructure spending. And infrastructure spending, it was mostly on physical infrastructure. Whereas the spending on education and health either remained stagnant as proportion of GDP or sometimes came down also. And then after 2004, the government had opted for rights-based approach to development. That is when flagship schemes were announced. Flagship schemes like this Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, and National Rural Health Mission, NRAGA. These flagship schemes have announced. This is when social sector spending had gone up. It had gone up from 2004 onwards. It had increased by very significant amount from 2004 onwards. And then it continued And after 2014, something more was added, that is DBTs. These DBTs also had become a very important instrument, direct beneficiary transfers. DBTs, direct benefit transfers. And with all these things, what happened? Definitely social sector spending has increased, especially on education and health. Social sector spending has increased, especially on education and health during this period, right? And but still we have not achieved the targets. Basically the target is that we should have spent at least 6% on education and 6% on health, but that has not been achieved. Next, during the corona crisis, again we have increased expenditure on health. Thanks to corona, we have increased the expenditure on health, but again that was only for that particular year when we had spent a significant amount of money on providing free vaccines. We have spent a significant amount of money. On the other hand, we have also launched this PMJAY, Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana, the Ayushman Bharat. So the focus was more on insurance, health insurance, than on health infrastructure. Health insurance than health infrastructure. Now the question that is being asked here is, whether the expenditure on social sector is in consonance with achieving the objectives of inclusive growth. Unfortunately, it falls short. Why? Because we can see now that almost 50% of young people who are in the age group, who are graduates, are unemployed, clearly showing that there is no emphasis on skill-based education. And then even in other health indicators also, if you look at this global indices on health, which clearly show that malnourishment is still very high in India. So which clearly shows that it is not in consonance with inclusive growth. And what is the solution you are offering? At least it should be made mandatory for both the central and state governments to spend at least 6% of their GDP on education and health. That is what answer you have to write. This is the answer that you have to write. Next, what are the causes of persistent high food inflation in India? Comment on the effectiveness of the monetary policy of the RBI to control this type of inflation. If you remember, when we had done our this economic survey classes, and that is what we have done all these things also in the class, in our economic survey classes. Because as I keep on saying, for the main examination, economic survey is more than sufficient to answer all the questions. This statement was directly picked up from only economic survey. So what are the causes for persistent high food inflation in India? A comment on the effectiveness of monetary policy. First and foremost, as we discussed in our economic survey class also, first and foremost, the basic problem is supply chain disruptions. That means producers are producing the food, and mostly this it is what is called perishable commodities. Tomatoes and all the vegetables, fruits, everything, they are perishable commodities. By the time they reach from the farmers to the final consumers, there is huge amount of gap. I remember, if you remember, this is the explanation I have given also. In Nasik, where this onion production takes place. In Madanapalli, in Andhra Pradesh, where tomato production takes place. At some point of time, tomato producers were getting only 50 paise per kilo in the wholesale markets. The same tomatoes were selling at 100 rupees in Delhi. We can understand why we have a very high food inflation. You have to write all these things. You have to write all the answers with facts. That is the most important thing. Supply side, because we don't have a, first and foremost, we don't have, cold storage houses. We don't have cold storage houses. Second, we don't have proper transportation facilities. Proper transportation facilities. We don't have proper transportation facilities. Next, the problem is that if you look at India, most of these vegetables, you find their production in southern India, southern part of the country. Southern part of the country. And in South India, agriculture is mostly dependent only on monsoon. In North India, rivers are perennial. In South India, they are not. So they depend on monsoon. And monsoon can be extremely uncertain. This uncertain monsoon is one of the most important factors that results in very high food inflation. Excess monsoon can be problematic, and droughts can also be problematic. That is what next factor. Next factor is these input costs are going up for farmers. Input costs. This is what we call cost push in inflation. Input costs are going up for farmers. Farmers are forced to pay huge amount of money for fertilizers, chemicals, and even thanks to NREGA, the wages also of agricultural labor have gone up. One of the negative consequences of NREGA is that who suffered the most because of the NREGA? Marginal, small and marginal farmers. Why? Because it becomes almost impossible for them to employ laborer. They are forced to pay huge amount of wages because otherwise they will not come and work in the fields also. This is another reason. Next is global prices. Global prices of food grains also have impact on our domestic inflation, food inflation. Global prices are also is responsible for high food inflation. Next one is the procurement policies of the government. Procurement policies. The government, what do? Political populism. They keep on increasing the prices of MSP, of rice or wheat or anything, which automatically results in high food inflation also. Procurement policies of the government. Procurement policies of the government. Next, reason why high food inflation is seasonal. This food inflation is mostly seasonal. As I said, these prices like tomatoes, we call them as top. Tomatoes, onions and potatoes. Now also you can see, in most of the markets, onions have already reached 100 rupees. In central government and some other state governments are trying to sell onions through their own retail distribution shops to bring down the prices. Because now we are witnessing what is called unseasonal rain. Unseasonal rains. That is also increases prices. Next reason why we have food inflation is because increase in rural demand. Whatever that is being produced, it is not coming to urban areas. Because of increase in the income of the people, increase in rural demand. So we are not producing enough amount of food that is needed for the entire country also. Increase in rural demand. That is what, these are all the reasons why we are witnessing very high food inflation. Again, if you go back, that is what we discussed in our economic survey also, that a monetary policy of RBI is not at all going to be effective. I remember I gave you the example also. In 2013, inflation was in double digits. RBI kept on increasing the repo rates and reverse repo rates. The then RBI Governor Subbarao was asked, why are you increasing the repo rates and reverse repo rates? In spite of the fact that it will not bring down the inflation, because the inflation was cost push inflation. RBI's monetary policy can be effective only when inflation is demand pull inflation. Food inflation is demand pull inflation. And that is the reason why RBI's monetary policy is mostly ineffective. That is what you have to say. And what is the solution? Supply side measures should be taken by the government. Supply side measures should be taken by the government. Right, that is what you have to write for this question. Supply side measures should be taken by the government. That is what you have to write for this question. Next, what were the factors responsible for the successful implementation of land reforms in some parts of the country? That is what the question says. Again, please remember, these are all the questions that test your analysis, not knowledge of useless facts. And this is where, again, in GS paper 3 last year, average score was only 70 marks. Because in conventional general studies classes never teach you these things. And that is the reason why people never get marks also. Why? Because agriculture is one topic which is never taught. Agriculture is mostly taught by geography teachers, and economy teachers skip it because they themselves don't know. That's a different thing, right? And geography teachers do not know these things, land reforms, because it is a socio-economic issue. Let us see what are the factors responsible for successful implementation of land reforms. Elaborate. First and foremost, what is required is a strong political leadership. We need political leadership. First and foremost, we need political leadership. Please remember, the question may be of economy. You have to write a multidimensional answer. Because there is no economics here, unfortunately. There is no economics here. First one is you need political leadership. Where did we see successful implementation of land reforms? We have seen successful implementation of land reforms in states like Bengal, West Bengal, and Kerala, and Andhra Pradesh, United Andhra Pradesh, Telangana parts. What is common here? In all these states, in these states, it was the left front governments that were in power. Left front governments that were in power. Their ideology is always based on, socialism and communism. Leftist governments. They focus mostly on redistribution of income and wealth. Redistribution of income and wealth. And agriculture was the main occupation of the people in the early years of our independence. That is the reason why they implemented these land reforms. And not only strong political leadership, second reason why is because of civil society movements. As we have mentioned, civil society movements. Please remember, in this question there is no economics. There is no economics in this question. Civil society movements. Again, give the example. In Bengal, late 1960s. In Bengal, late 1960s, we have seen this Naxalism, Naxalbari, wherein these young people had started this movement for land reforms. Similarly, in Kerala also, social reform movements focused on land reforms. Right? Social reform movements also focused on land reforms. Similarly, in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana also, it was mostly these civil society movements. Again, Naxalism only. The focus was on implementing land reforms. Because what did civil society movements have done? They created awareness among the people. They created awareness among the people. And this awareness has forced the governments to implement land reforms. In other parts of the country, that kind of awareness was not there. Next reason why we have implemented, another important reason is this legislation, administrative dimension. Some of the state governments had come out with legislations, especially tenancy reforms, providing rights to the tiller of the land. In states like Maharashtra, we have seen these tenancy reforms, giving rights to the tiller of the land. In some states like Maharashtra, we have tenancy reforms, right? And of course, another reason here is that efficiency of administration also, commitment of administration. For example, in states like Jammu and Kashmir, the administration implemented effectively these land reforms. In states like Jammu and Kashmir, right? That is where we have seen. And later, after liberalization, privatization, globalization, again, we have seen that awareness among the people have forced the governments to implement reforms. Land reforms here, after LPG, land reforms is not about redistribution of income, land. It was about contract farming, corporate farming, cooperative farming. So that is the reason why in states like Bihar, in states like in states like Madhya Pradesh and Chhattisgarh, these kind of land reforms are implemented. That is what and then of course, as I said, mass movements also, people revolting against the governments, mass movements. For example, in Telangana, there was mass movement against the Patel community. They were the landlords. Former Prime Minister of India, P.V. Narasimha, he was from this Telangana, and his land, he was the owner of hundreds of acres of land, and his land was confiscated by the Naxalites. They went there and they put up their flags there. He could never go to his own village also. Mass movements, right? That also led to implementation of these land reforms. That is what. And then in 1960s, the government also had come out with cooperative movement, wherein the farmers are asked to come together and also reap the benefits of what is called increasing returns to scale. All of them are basically responsible for implementation of land reforms. Now, as part of your conclusion, what you have to write? You have to mention that as part of your conclusion, at this point of time, in this age of liberalization, privatization, globalization, scope of land reforms must be expanded to make sure that agriculture is transformed into industry. Agriculture is getting the status of industry. It is getting the status of industry, as M.S. Swaminathan has pointed out. Next, right. Next, let us go to the next question. Explain the role of millets for ensuring health and nutritional security in India. Again, when we discussed economic survey, government has declared last year was a year of millets. So you will definitely expect one question, and they have asked. It is very easy. The best part of the main examination is that you can easily predict all the questions. UPSC will never go beyond these things. Explain the role of millets in ensuring health and nutritional security. You can write whatever you don't know also, these kind of questions. What is it? First, millets are rich in essential nutrients. Then they are also high in fiber content. The question should be put up to health and nutritionists, not to the UPSC aspirants. They are also rich in fiber content. And then they are also gluten free. And then they are also good for people with diabetes and blood pressure and everything, millets. And they also ensure nutritional security. You can give all these examples also. I think this is a very cute, innocent question asked by UPSC, right? And that is the reason why you can see, in Parliament also, our Parliament canteen serves mostly millets, right? And another thing with millets is that they are drought resistant, because this wheat and rice, they require huge amount of water. They are drought resistant, and they are also affordable and accessible. That is what we study about food security. 5 A's that we talk about: availability, affordability, accessibility. 5 A's that we talk about. All those 5 A's of food security are achieved with the help of millets. This is a very good, cute question that UPSC asks, right? Next, these are all the 4 questions related to economy. Next one and next 2 are about science and technology. I mentioned that science and technology, we will not do that. Come to the 8th question. What role do environmental NGOs and activists play in influencing environmental impact assessment outcomes for major projects in India. Cite 4 examples and all important details. As I mentioned, the same kind of questions can be asked in your GS paper 3. The same thing has been asked in your ethics case studies also. That is the reason why, if you are preparing, always keep on saying that always prepare for UPSC from concept point of view, not from topic point of view. The same question can be asked in your GS paper 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. The question says that this environmental impact assessment. This environmental and social impact assessment is one of the most important reforms that the government has introduced to make sure that the developmental process can be sustained for a longer period of time. And after 1991, we have opted for what is called public-private partnerships. And what is the problem with these public-private partnerships? In these public-private partnerships, the most critical component, people, are completely left out. It is a partnership between the government and the private sector without any participation of the stakeholders. And more often than not, this public-private partnership had degenerated into crony capitalism. It led to ruthless exploitation of the resources, ultimately for which the price is paid by the stakeholders. That is when the governments have realized that it is resulting in rapid economic growth but not in qualitative development. Economic growth is different from qualitative development. And any kind of economic growth should be benefiting only the people at the ground level, because inclusive growth is more important than rapid economic growth, inclusive growth. So that is the reason why the government had come out with this idea of environmental and social impact assessment. This was brought during the time of UPA, United Progressive Alliance government, to make sure that these infrastructure projects fulfill all the necessary conditions. This is where civil society organizations and NGOs had become extremely critical, because those NGOs which are working in the field of environment would be proactive in making sure that this audit is done of public-private partnerships from the perspective of two things. One is protecting the environment. Second one is from the perspective of social factors, that is inclusive growth also. Because as part of this PPP, public-private partnerships, the government and the private sector will be taking away the land, will be taking away the mineral resources, will be taking away the habitations of mostly the poor people, the tribals as well as the farmers, and they should be included in the entire development process to make sure it is inclusive growth. That is when these green NGOs started fighting on behalf of these vulnerable sections of society, because they don't have the kind of resources to fight against these powerful multinational companies in the judiciary. And these green NGOs started fighting for the rights of these sections of society. So the question says that, can you give 4 examples with important details? As I said, we can give very good examples here. What is NGOs do before giving the examples? What is their role? First and foremost, what do? They will create awareness, as we study also about the role of NGOs and civil society organizations. First and foremost, what will they do? They will create awareness among stakeholders. First, they will create awareness among stakeholders. Because as we keep on saying, any kind of reform can be implemented only when there is active participation of stakeholders. And there will be active participation of stakeholders only when awareness is created among them. And that is what these NGOs will be doing. They will create awareness among the stakeholders about the consequences of the development. Next, they will also intervene using legal means. They will use legal instruments to intervene in the implementation of these projects. Judiciary, public interest litigation, PILs. They will be filing PILs. They will be using legal instruments to intervene in these projects. Next, they will also participate in these public hearings and consultations. For example, what we have done as part of environmental impact assessment, social impact assessment, we have mentioned that Gram Sabha permission should be taken, and there will be a public hearing about the projects. These Gram Sabhas are convened, and these Gram Sabhas permission should be taken, and they will be participating in these meetings on behalf of the people to bring to the notice of the government as well as the private sector the consequences of those projects. And then next thing is that they will be evaluating the performance of the projects, and they keep on reporting about them. They will once any promises are made, they will evaluate and they keep on reporting also, so that the promises made are fulfilled by the private sector. This is what we say multi-actor paradigm model. Multi-actor paradigm model. Next, let us look at the examples that we can give here. Some of the examples that we can give here. What the example that we can give here? First of all, as I told you, this Narmada Bachao Andolan, NBA, Narmada Bachao Andolan, Medha Patkar and others. Thanks to the efforts of this Narmada Bachao Andolan, this Sardar Sarovar project, the relief and rehabilitation of tribals was very successful. Relief and rehabilitation of tribals was very successful because they fought on behalf of the tribals. Medha Patkars, Narmada Bachao Andolan, Sardar Sarovar Dam project. The second one is Vedanta mining project. Vedanta mining project. Vedanta mining project, again in Odisha. In Odisha, this mining project, was fought by an NGO called Survival International. An NGO called Survival International, to protect the interests of the tribals. To protect the interests of the tribals. Again, third one is this POSCO project. POSCO. Again in Odisha, steel project. POSCO. Project. And this environmental impact assessment was facing so much of challenges, right? Finally, POSCO had withdrawn from the project because of the agitations by NGOs. It had withdrawn from the project because of the agitations by NGOs. Next, fourth one is this Silent Valley movement. Silent Valley movement. Silent Valley movement in Kerala. In Kerala. To protest against a hydroelectric project. To protest against hydroelectric project. Right. So you can give as many examples. As I said, you can give this Namami Gange project to clean river Ganges, wherein most of the NGOs are participating there. You can give other examples in Jharkhand against these coal-based thermal power plants. You can give the examples of in Madhya Pradesh again against some of these industries, wherein the NGOs are fighting for environmental impact assessment, and they have succeeded in protecting the interests of the tribals also. You can give as many examples as you want. Next, explain how. Next ninth question. This is about internal security. Again, please remember, these internal security, all these questions, internal security, can be answered only from second YASI report on global terrorism and public order. 2 reports. And Ministry of Home Affairs annual report. A second Administrative Reforms Commission has submitted 2 reports. One is on terrorism, second one is on public order. One on terrorism, second one on public order. And then Ministry of Home Affairs annual report. Department of Internal Security is their annual report. That is more than enough. Right? This narco-terrorism, it was directly picked up from Second House report on terrorism. And it is also mentioned extensively in Ministry of Home Affairs annual report. As I keep on saying here, for your main examination, you don't have to go beyond government reports. Everything you can get it from the government reports. That's the reason why main examination preparation does not require more than 2.5 months. Because everything is there in the government reports along with current events. So, again, narco-terrorism, this is a very, what you call a generic question. What is narco-terrorism? Basically, it means, financing terror activities with the help of, this trade in drugs trade. Financing terror activities through illegal drug trade. Financing terror activities through illegal drug trade. Why this narco-terrorism is a major threat in India? Because India is part of this, what is popularly known as Golden Crescent. India is a part of this Golden Crescent, which passes through, Afghanistan, and before Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, India, Myanmar, and then to Southeast Asian countries. India is a very, very important part of this Golden Crescent. And that is the reason why it becomes extremely useful for, terrorists to use illegal trade in drugs to finance their operations. For example, Taliban, then before that Al-Qaeda, and then, at present, these terror groups operating from Pakistan, all of them have used this drug money to finance liberally their terror activities. It was there from the days of 1980s, when Soviet Union has occupied Afghanistan. That was the time America has, propelled this religious fundamentalist organization to fight Soviet Union, which is called the Taliban. And Afghanistan is a fertile ground for all these, drug trade, illegal drug trade, opium and all of them, because Afghanistan has vast territory and it is being produced by Taliban. And that is where it is being exported to other countries, and they make huge amount of money, running into billions of dollars. Except that later, when Soviet Russia had left Afghanistan, this Al-Qaeda and Taliban have used that money to finance terror activities, not only against India, but also against America itself also. Now, with America entering into Afghanistan, they tried to control this drug trade, but they were not successful. And America could not fight ultimately there, and they had left. That has given rise to, again, this narco-terrorism again now. It is a major problem for India now. Why? Because these drugs now you find in almost every part of the country, interior parts of the country also. Most of the South Indian states now suffer from this illegal drug trade. And it is becoming very difficult for law enforcement agencies to curb these activities, because in places like Goa, they are available sometimes legally also. The governments are also closing their eyes because it gives them revenues also. So this is where it has become problematic. And there are many instances we have seen wherein this illegal drug trade money is being used to finance terror activities, like Pakistan terror organizations like Lashkar-e-Toiba and Indian Mujahideen, and all these terror organizations are using. We have come out with solutions like FATF, Financial Action Task Force. They have freezed the accounts, but again they would open new accounts. It becomes almost impossible to track the flow of funds also, because thanks to this internet banking, it becomes very easy. Even before their accounts are freezed, the money will be withdrawn from those accounts. They will immediately open new accounts also, because they are more active, more aggressive than law enforcement agencies. That is what the problem here is, right? Nowadays what they are doing, they are using the drones technology for for this drugs also, delivery of drugs. And in Punjab, in border states like Punjab and Jammu, it was found that these drones are being used by the Pakistan-based drug mafia to illegally transport these drugs into India. And then recently near the Gujarat coast also, the government in this port also, Paradip port, what is that port? Gujarat, Adani controlled port, Mudra port. They have seized huge amount of drug contingent, running into thousands and crores of rupees also. It was said that it was almost 1 lakh crores. Such a huge contingent was also seized, clearly showing the seriousness of the problem. And what is the solution, Digga? What is the solution? What is the solution? You can write very, as usual, good, innocent, cute solutions. Like, you must strengthen border security, strengthening border security. Second, collaborating with international agencies, Third, enhancing financial intelligence. Fourth, strengthening laws and strict enforcement of laws. Strengthening laws and strict enforcement of those laws. Next, use of technology for intelligence gathering. And public awareness and rehabilitation programs. Please remember, the same question was asked in ethics case study for 20 marks few years back. Another thing that you have to remember here is that UPSC is taking all the previous year's questions and they are interchanging the questions. A question can be asked in polity, next year it will be asked in economy. This land reforms was asked in your internal security few years back, and now it was asked in economy. Right? That is the reason why try to do previous year's questions, practice them. Next, discuss the context and silent features of the DPDP Act 2023, Digital Personal Data Protection Act. Why do we need this DPDP? Why? Because first and foremost, we have seen a huge amount of spread of social media. And what is the consequence here? The consequence of social media is first, there is no control over social media. Second, there is a lot of scope for misinformation on social media. Third, fake news. Fourth, there is no protection. To personal data. Next problem is, this personal data is used by social websites like Facebook, and they sell the personal data of the individuals for billions of dollars. Next, misuse of this personal data of individuals. Next problem is with this, it is a threat to national security also, because sensitive information also can be easily hacked. Threat to national security also. And then Supreme Court had come out with various judgments regarding right to privacy. The most important one is the Supreme Court judgment in Puttaswamy case, wherein it has mentioned that right to privacy is an integral part of right to life and personal liberty. And then Supreme Court also had come out with other judgment, wherein it has said that right to forget is also part of right to life and personal liberty. Why? Because once the information is there on the social media, it cannot be removed or destroyed. That is the reason why you can see that recently also Supreme Court had asked the social media website and everyone else to remove all the personal data of this Calcutta rape victim, including her photographs and everything else. Right? So these Supreme Court judgments and also the concerns expressed by the various stakeholders has forced the government of India to come out with this comprehensive DPDP Act, National Personal Data Protection Act. So what are the important features of this legislation? First, consent is needed for any processing of data of individuals. First and foremost, consent is needed. Consent is needed for data processing of individuals. Next, fiduciaries, F-I-D-U-C-I-A-R-I-S, fiduciaries means the entities that collect the data of individuals. Fiduciaries means the entities that collect the data of individuals must ensure transparency and accountability. Must ensure transparency and accountability. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? For example, e-commerce websites are there. E-commerce websites are there. You are giving your phone number. You are giving your house details. You are giving all the purchases that you are made. And these entities must keep all the data completely secretive. Next thing is that if any of the data has to be accessed by any of these banks or financial institutions, next thing is that permission must be taken. Prior permission must be taken to access the data of individuals. Prior permission must be taken to access the data of the individuals. Next thing is localization of data. Data localization. That means data related to Indian citizens must be stored in data centers which are located only in India. Next, there are clear-cut penalties for any breach of the rights of individuals. There are clear-cut penalties for any breach of the rights of individuals. For the rights of individuals. Next, protection of the data related to the children. Protection of data related to the children. Next, there should be effective grievance redressal mechanism for citizens. There should be effective grievance redressal mechanism for children. Grievance redressal mechanism. Right? That is what part of this DPDP legislation. What are the exemptions here? What are the exemptions? The government can access the data in public interest. Government can access the data in public interest. For example, your fingerprints. Government has your fingerprints, Aadhaar. Right? And tomorrow a terrorist is arrested. Right? The government wanted to know whether the person is the same one that they are looking for. Then through his Aadhaar data, his fingerprints can be accessed by the government in the name of public interest. Right? So this is what you have to write for this question. Next, discuss the merits and demerits of the 4 labor codes in the context of labor market reforms in India. What has been the progress so far in this regard? Merits and demerits of the 4 labor codes and what has been the progress in this regard. Again, please remember, this was again part of economic survey only. It was directly picked up from economic survey. If you remember, while discussing economic survey, we have also spoken about labor codes. Nothing in your economy can be asked, will be asked beyond economic survey. Right? So what do we say here? What do we say here? When Indian economy was facing severe crisis, we have implemented the first generation of economic reforms. The first generation of economic reforms were implemented between 1993 and 1991 and 1993. First generation of economic reforms, which covered what is popularly known as liberalization, privatization and globalization. The second generation of economic reforms were implemented between 2001 and 2003, which have covered mostly financial sector, insurance, pensions and everything else, financial sector. But the third generation of economic reforms remained unimplemented for most of the time. Third generation of economic reforms, basically about regulatory authorities, public-private partnerships, everything else, right? And the most important part of this third generation of economic reforms is what is called labor reforms. Labor reforms. Labor reforms. So the government, as part of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, have implemented reforms in public-private partnerships to make it more easier for the private sector, and also they had come out with PLIs, production linked incentives, other things. At the same time, during the corona crisis, the government also has said that they will implement labor reforms. Why do we need labor reforms? What is the reason why we need labor reforms? Right? We need labor reforms for various reasons. Why do we need labor reforms? First, overall economic reforms cannot be successful without labor reforms, because labor is still the most important factor of production in India. Overall economic reforms cannot be successful without labor reforms. Overall economic reforms cannot be successful without labor reforms. Right? Second, India still has a huge amount of surplus labor. Surplus labor. India has still a huge amount of surplus labor, human resources. Right? Third, unemployment is a major problem in the country. Unemployment is a major problem in the country. Fourth, maximum amount of labor in India is in unorganized sector, where there are no social sector benefits for them. Maximum amount of labor is in unorganized sector. Unorganized sector. Yes. Fourth, maximum amount of labor in India is working in unorganized sector. Unorganized sector means wherein they don't have any social security in terms of health insurance. For example, you are working in construction sector and you are falling from fourth floor and you are breaking your legs. There is no health insurance for you. Unorganized sector. And the minimum wages are also not prescribed, and they are not implemented, and there is no protection, and there is no equality in terms of wages, men and women. These are all the things. And there are no fixed working hours also. There are no fixed working hours also. That is where the problem is. Again, Economic Survey has pointed out all these things. As I keep on saying, please only read Economic Survey. Everything else can wait. Right? This is another thing. Next thing is that because of the fact that we have a federal polity, there is no uniformity in the laws. There is no uniformity in laws. Every state has its own set of laws. There is no uniformity in laws. Sixth, our ability to attract investment, both domestic as well as foreign. our ability to attract investment, both domestic and foreign, depends on labor reforms. Most of the foreign investors are not willing to come to India because we don't have proper labor codes, labor laws, right? Too many complicated rules and regulations. That is the reason why the government has decided that they will implement these labor market reforms, right? So let us look at the important features of this labor code. First one, as I said, first feature of this labor code is simplification of labor laws. First one is simplification of labor laws. First part of labor code is simplification of labor laws. There were 44 labor codes earlier. There were 44 central laws. There were 44 central laws, labor codes earlier. Not one or two. 44 labor codes earlier. Now they have been simplified into 4 labor codes. From 44 to 4 labor codes. Second is, that is what we keep on saying, hire and fire. That is flexibility in appointment and removal. Hire and fire. Flexibility in hiring the people and also in removing the people. Right? Hiring the people, and that is what I said. Why foreign investors are not coming? Once you employ a person in India, it becomes almost impossible for any organization to remove. That is the reason why, please remember, when software sector, IT sector, was about to become globalized in nature in India, all these IT sector representatives met the then Finance Minister Manmohan Singh and said that any future of India's IT sector development depends only on one condition. That is, they should not allow, the government should not allow any trade unions in IT sector. Simple. No trade unions in IT sector. There should not be any labor commissioner of the government overseeing the functioning of IT sector. Then only we will. That is the reason why in IT sector hire and fire policy is there. That is the reason why you can see them pink slips are now given through WhatsApp messages. You have been removed from the organization immediately. We sincerely thank your services and hope the best for you in the future. You have been removed. You don't have to come to the organization. Is it possible in any other sector like this? That is the thing. This is what one of the features of this labor code. Third one is encouraging formalization of employment. Formalization of employment. That means unorganized labor, unorganized sector labor should become part of organized sector. This is another feature of labor code. Formalization. And fourth one is making sure that social security benefits are given to workers, especially now in India, 2 sectors. One is construction, second one is this gig economy also. Social security benefits. These gig workers, what we call them, they work for 15 hours, 18 hours in rain, in winter, in heat, in pollution. Social security benefit should be extended to them. This is what basically labor code talks about. And what are the challenges here? What are the demerits here? What are the problems here? The question also talks about the problems and demerits also. First and foremost, with this hire and fire, what is the consequence? It reduces job security for workers. There is no job security. Give the example of software sector. Give the example of gig workers. Yes. Give the example of corporate sector. Everywhere. First is it reduces security for workers. Second, problem is, it overburdens small enterprises. The problem here is that, MSMEs in India are facing this, what is called a regulatory cholesterol. This labor code is adding to that. You need to, fulfill so many obligations. And that is the reason why most of them, they say, they do not want to become part of formal sector. Why? Because the moment you become part of formal sector, it becomes almost impossible for you to, remove the workers. Even if you are incurring losses, you cannot remove them. Right? So that is the reason why, there are so many challenges when it comes related to implementation. Most of them do not want to become part of this formal sector. Next problem is that, with labor code, the problem here is that, if you look at them, unwillingness on the part of the state governments. Unwillingness on the part of the state governments. State governments are not willing to implement it. Why? Why? It will be considered anti-people, anti-poor people. And there is so much of resistance by trade unions. There is so much of resistance by trade unions. Right? And then, already, we have seen that in some of these sectors, IT sector and in service sector, we have seen that workers are being exploited. In states like Tamil Nadu, the government wanted to come out with 14 hours work per day work period also. It results in over exploitation of workers. That is the next problem. It can lead to over exploitation of workers. Recently, you must have seen in Pune, a woman died, committed suicide. Recently in UP, again a woman working with HDFC Bank died in the office itself because of work pressure. It is said that all these labor reforms, even though they are called labor reforms, they will be only benefiting capitalist class. That is what the critics have said. That is the reason why progress has not been as good as it should have been in implementation of labor reforms, because political parties, rightly or wrongly, are siding themselves with the labor than the capitalists. And there is no proof to show that these reforms would result in more foreign investment. They would result in improving productivity. They would result in providing more security. There is no proof. There is no empirical proof. That is what you have to write all these things here. Next, what is the need for expanding the regional air connectivity in India? In this context, discuss the government's UDAN scheme and its achievements. I said infrastructure. Here, one question from infrastructure. It can be road transportation, it can be rail transportation, it can be air transportation, or it can be inland water transportation. It can be Bharat Mala, it can be Sagar Mala, it can be this air connectivity, right? UDAN. What is this UDAN? Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik. That is what is called UDAN. That means the mango man of India. Right? Aam means mango. Mango man of India should be able to fly, so that apples and other fruits can swim. Equality before law should be there. Apples and others, apple man, banana man. After all, we are in a mango man in a banana democracy. Banana republic, what we call it as. Mango man in a banana republic. He should be able to fly. Okay, please remember, this question was asked by UPSC in your Indian economy a few years back. The same question was repeated. Yes, it was repeated. Why? It had this UDAN scheme had come into existence long time back. It was asked by UPSC earlier. That is what I keep on saying. Please go through previous year's questions. UPSC would shamelessly repeat them. If you have written that, that year mains also, and you can write, please refer to my answer at 2016 mains, page number 24, GS paper 3. Right? So these kind of questions, what is there to discuss? Also very straightforward, innocent, cute question. Right? Why do we need regional connectivity? Why do we need regional air connectivity? First, promotes economic growth. It promotes economic growth. Why? Industrialization, infrastructure development, tourism, then improving business. All of them are part of this. Industrialization, infrastructure development, tourism, business, trade. Everything is linked to expanding our transportation facilities. Second, it also ensures improved accessibility to various parts of the country. Improved accessibility to various parts of the country. Improved accessibility, especially tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Next, it also ensures regional development, especially if these airports come up in the areas. It also ensures regional development by removing regional inequalities. Next, it also provides employment to the people. It also provides employment to the people. Employment to the people. Next, it reduces congestion in major airports. How? We don't know, but we will. It reduces congestion in major airports. How can it reduce congestion in major airports? For example, you have to go to Delhi. Will you be going to Lucknow? Because the congestion is very less. And from Lucknow you will travel by walking to Delhi, or will you jump into the river, swim, and come up in Yamuna, right? But you have to write all these things, stupid things. Okay. So it was launched in 2016. The scheme was launched in 2016. 2016. This is what happens when UPSC also becomes a cheerleader for the government. They will be asking these kind of questions, right? What are the achievements? Let us look at the achievements, glorious achievements. Let us look at them. It has increased connectivity. It has increased connectivity. How? 400 routes have been operationalized. 400 routes have been operationalized. And it has connected more than 65 airports and helipads in the country. Heliports. Yeah, they are called heliports also, right? Next, it has made air travel affordable. Air travel affordable. Don't ask me where. Right? Any kind of counter questions. Internal security. Right? You will be called a drug lord. Right? Next, it has resulted in development of infrastructure. Development of infrastructure. Development of infrastructure. Next, it has given a major boost to tourism and trade. It has given a major boost to tourism and trade. It led to rapid economic growth in smaller cities. In smaller cities. Right? So that is what you have to write for this question. Next, what are the major challenges faced by the Indian irrigation system in recent times? State the measures taken by the government for efficient irrigation management. So what are the major challenges faced by the Indian irrigation system in recent times? What are the measures taken by the government? Again, this was directly picked up from economic survey. And we have discussed these things also as part of our economic survey discussions, all these things. As we have mentioned, what is the major problem now? Even after 75 years of independence, only around, going by the liberal estimates of the government, 55% of our land is irrigated. It is only 45%, but we will go by government. Only 55% of our land is irrigated, remaining 45% depends on monsoon for its survival. Indian agriculture is still a major gamble with our monsoon, right? So, second problem is exploitation of groundwater resources. Exploitation of groundwater resources, right? Exploitation of groundwater resources. Again, economic survey has pointed out that among the BRICS countries, India is the country that uses maximum amount of water per acre of land. We use maximum amount of water per acre of land, especially groundwater. Next, wastage of water. Wastage of water. Because we have mostly what is called flood irrigation. What is this flood irrigation? You must have studied all these things in your agriculture. What is flood irrigation? Economy means only study agriculture. I keep on saying, whatever the nonsense that you study in your classes is not economy, right? Flood irrigation, mostly these are tube wells and bore wells. The entire agricultural field is flooded with water. If 10% of water is required, you are using 100% of water. 90% of water becomes waste. Why? Because electricity is given free of cost and water is also given free of cost. Inefficient use of water. Next, infrastructure is also not efficient. Infrastructure is not efficient nor sufficient. It is neither efficient nor sufficient. Infrastructure is neither efficient nor sufficient. Why? Maintenance of dams. Recently we have seen Tungabhadra, Karnataka. The dam gates, literally were flooded in the floods. We have not properly maintained irrigation dams. Next problem is water logging and sanitization, salinization of water. Water logging and increasing salinity in the soil. Water logging and increasing salinity. Next, regional disparities in availability of water. Regional disparities. Why? Because North India has an extensive canal system linking agricultural fields with the rivers, whereas South India is mostly dependent on rainwater. That is the reason why all the time Kaveri river water issues. Because whenever there is deficiency of monsoon, it results in a fight among the state governments. This is another problem, regional disparities. Next one is climate change, impact of climate change. Impact of climate change. Climate change. What is happening? It is resulting in increasing droughts. On one hand, droughts and famines. On the other hand, excessive rainfall, which is making food security a major challenge also. This is what we say. What are the measures taken by the government? You have to write about all the schemes. I keep on saying you have to remember important schemes of the government. For example, the government had, a long time back, had come out with the scheme, Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana, PMKSY. The objective is to provide water to every field, har khet ko pani, right? That is what, only Hindi water should be given to fields, right? Hindi water, right? Next, the government also has started this micro irrigation schemes, drip irrigation, sprinkler irrigation, micro irrigation. Next, National Water Mission was launched by the government. National Water Mission was launched by the government to improve water efficiency by 20%. To improve water efficiency by 20%. Next, Jal Jeevan Mission was also launched by the government. Jal Jeevan Mission was also launched by the government. Jal Jeevan Mission. Next, previously 1970s, we had a Command Area Development Program and a National Watershed Development Program. They were also launched by the governments. Dryland Area Development Program, DPAP, Desert Development Program, all of them were launched by the governments, right? You can write about all of them. Next, illustrate the importance of buffer stocks for stabilizing agricultural prices in India. What are the challenges associated with the storage of buffer stocks in India? Again, this is a very cute question, because these are the questions for which you don't have to do much also. Again, please remember, almost all the questions are only from agriculture, right? Agriculture and inclusive growth, only these two topics which are favorites with UPSC. Why do we need buffer stocks? When did the government of India come out with this idea of buffer stocks? Why did the government of India come out with the idea of buffer stocks? Because in early 1960s, India had faced severe food crisis. We start your answer with that one. In 1960s, India has faced a severe food crisis. Literally, India was like, what was our situation? From ship to mouth existence. Ship to mouth existence. That is what you have to write. Ship to mouth. That means, if the food grains are not imported through ships, it will not reach the mouth of the people. Extremely critical condition. That is when we have launched the Green Revolution. One of the important aspects of Green Revolution was to achieve food security. Food security. And as part of this, the government had come out with this idea called Food Corruption of India. Sorry, Food Corporation of India. Food Corporation of India. This FCI was given the responsibility of storing the food grains to ensure food security. That is what you have to write as part of your introduction. Then what are the, why do we need buffer stocks? You can write. First, to ensure price stability. It will ensure price stability. Second, it will ensure food security. It will ensure food security. Third, it can help in controlling inflation. It can help in controlling inflation. And fourth, it will provide income support to farmers, MSP. Income support to farmers. Support to farmers. Then what are the major challenges? What are the challenges? First, inadequate infrastructure. We don't have adequate infrastructure. In states like Punjab and Haryana, these food grains are stored in open, and there is every possibility that these food grains would become fodder for rats. Rats also have Food Security Act. Under Pradhan Mantri, Garib Kalyan Rat Anna Yojana, right? That is what we say. Inadequate infrastructure. Second, very high cost of maintenance. High cost of maintenance. Third, loss of food grains due to inadequate storage facilities. Inadequate storage facilities. I gave you the example, Punjab and Haryana. Only in 2021, huge amount of wheat was lost because it has become fodder for rats. They were stored in open. And whenever they are stored in open, immediately, rain god gets SMS that tonight itself there will be heavy rain. Entire food grains will become useless. Next, overstocking and understocking issues. Overstocking and understocking issues. Either you are stocking your food grains more or understocking issues. Right? For example, if you look at rice and wheat, we have 3 times more than the basic food that is required also, overstocking and understocking. And it results in conflict with WTO. Next one is, it also results in conflict with WTO norms. Because WTO says that India is overstocking food grains, which is resulting in high food inflation also around the world. WTO also. Next. Then there are also problems related to the transportation of food grains, which results in transportation of food grains, which results in corruption, more corruption. Right? That is what we say about this question. Next, come to disaster management, 17th question. What is disaster resilience? How it is determined? Describe various elements of resilience framework. Also mention the global targets of Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Every year, a question on disaster management is always compulsory. In the last few years, if you look at it, UPSC is focusing more on what we call the theoretical aspects of disaster management than on practical aspects. That is the reason why the questions were about NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority. The questions were about disaster preparedness. The questions were about mitigation, all those things. This year also, UPSC followed the same trend. And they have asked about, again, theoretical aspects. What is disaster resilience and how it is determined? Describe various elements of a resilience framework, and in this regard, they talk about Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction between 2015 and 2030. So what are we talking about here? As we say, broadly we divide the disasters into 2 types, natural disasters and man-made disasters. Whenever we talk about disaster management, we always say that disaster management can be successful only when it is proactive in nature. It is proactive in nature. What do you mean by that? In case of man-made disasters, they can be prevented. Man-made disasters can be prevented. Since natural disasters cannot be prevented, what is required is mitigation. Mitigating, reducing the impact of disasters. Mitigation. Reducing the possibility as well as impact of disasters. And that is what is called disaster resilience. Disaster resilience basically is about you know, you know, having this capability mechanisms, capability mechanisms to reduce the impact, to ensure speedy recovery, and also effective rehabilitation. That is what we say. These are part of what is called disaster resilience. As we say, disaster management is a cyclical process. Why do we say disaster management is a cyclical process? Why do we say that it is a cyclical process? Why we say disaster management is a cyclical process? This is what we say: mitigation or prevention. First step is mitigation or prevention. Mitigation means, in case of natural disasters, it is mitigation. In case of man-made disasters, it is prevention. Second, preparedness. Preparedness. That means you are preparing for disasters. Both these are what we call proactive aspects of disaster management. Proactive. That means both of them you are taking even before disasters strike. Third one is response. Third one is response. And the fourth one is recovery and rehabilitation. Recovery and rehabilitation. This recovery and rehabilitation leads to mitigation or prevention. Recovery and rehabilitation leads to mitigation or prevention. Both these are part of reactive measures of disaster management. Reactive measures of disaster management. That means you are reacting after the disaster takes place. For example, there are floods in your locality. Response means you have to make sure that all those people who are affected by the floods are given basic things, food, medicines. They are brought to safer areas. Then after that, recovery and rehabilitation. You must make sure that they get back to their normal life. How? As part of recovery and rehabilitation, make sure that those people who are living in those low-lying areas, their houses are constructed at a particular height so that they can escape the flood fury, or rehabilitate them to safer areas, provide houses for them in other areas, especially coastal areas. That automatically results in prevention of disasters. That is what we say. And this is what we call disaster resilience. It includes all of them. It includes all of them. And this is what the Sendai framework also talks about. This Sendai framework basically is what United Nations has given for the countries around the world to reduce the impact of disasters. Why? Because the world is facing all kinds of disasters nowadays due to climate change. Even now also, if you happen to see yesterday and day before yesterday, America, some of the states in America are facing hurricanes with a wind speed of 280 kilometers per hour. 280 kilometers per hour. And at least at this point of time in Florida, 50 lakh people are living without electricity, drinking water. Please remember, it is called Florida, not Bihar. Right? There is no, when it comes to nature, it does not differentiate between rich and poor people. America is the country that exploits the nature ruthlessly, and that is also the country that pays a very heavy price. Every year America is losing billions and billions of dollars to these disasters. You can watch on YouTube the kind of destruction it is causing in states like Florida now. That is the reason why Sendai framework was given. What is the Sendai framework? It talks about it. What is it? It talks about. First, it talks about reduce the mortality. That means reduce the number of deaths in disasters. First, it talks about reduce mortality. Second, reduce the number of people affected by the disaster. Reduce the number of people affected by the disaster. Reduce the number of people affected by disaster. Third, reduce economic losses. Reduce economic losses. Fourth, reduce damage to critical infrastructure. Reduce damage to critical infrastructure like schools, hospitals, bridges, roads, everything. Next, increase the number of countries. Increase the number of countries that have national and local disaster risk reduction strategies. Disaster risk reduction strategies. Disaster risk reduction strategies. Next, increase international cooperation. Increase international cooperation. International cooperation. Next, increase the availability and use of early warning systems. Early warning systems. Availability and the use of early warning systems. Right? These are all the 7 elements of a Sendai framework. Again, all of them are commonsensical ones. Right? So this is about this. Next, flooding in urban areas is an emerging climate-induced disaster. Discuss, the causes of this disaster. Mention the features of 2 such major floods in the last 2 decades in India. Describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling these floods. Very easy to answer because there are no policies. Very easy to answer. There are no policies. For these kind of questions, writing answers will be difficult because you have to innovate, think, imagine, dream, and write answers. Because we don't have a single policy in any of the urban cities in India to reduce urban flooding. Yes, one policy is there. All the governments are trying, are making, are asking, are creating awareness among the people regarding how to swim. Once you start swimming, there will not be any problems. There will not be any deaths also. Right? The governments are making it compulsory for people to swim. Then only they will be given Aadhaar cards. Otherwise, there will not be any Aadhaar also. So coming back here, again, this is a commonsensical question. Urban floods, if you remember, this is what we discussed as part of urban development also. Urban floods is a major problem. And why we are having these urban floods? Again, very, very commonsensical answer. What is the reason why we are having urban floods? First, cloud burst has become a frequent phenomenon. Cloud burst. What do you mean by cloud burst? I think it was also asked in your GS paper 1. What is a cloud burst? Heavy and intense rainfall in a very short period of time. Heavy and intense rainfall. For example, in 24 hours time, you have 69 centimeters rainfall. cloud burst has become a common phenomena due to increasing natural disasters. First one is cloud burst. Second, climate change, urbanization. Climate change and urbanization. Then, why do we have other things? Then, next one is, improper urban planning. Improper urban planning. Next, extremely poor drainage system in urban areas. Extremely poor drainage system in urban areas. Extremely poor drainage system in urban areas. Next, encroachment of water bodies. Encroachment of water bodies. As I told you when we discussed this urbanization also, in 1950s in Chennai, in those days it was called good old Madras, now it is called Chennai. There were 20,000 urban water bodies, now less than 1,500. The present Chennai airport, international airport, was also part of water bodies only. Encroachment of water bodies. Next, deforestation. Deforestation. Right? Deforestation. All of them are contributing to urban floods. Can you give examples of urban floods in recent times? I gave you one now, Chennai. Urban floods. Chennai in 2015. And then, I remember talking about this film also, 2018. Kerala urban floods. And again, Bangalore, then Srinagar, then Hyderabad, and even Delhi recently. You can give why only two major, we can give 20. Thanks to India, there is no depth of examples here, right? Right. Then explain the policies and frameworks. There you can write. I am sure there not even a single policy in India. Since there is no policy, I cannot write anything also. Give me marks and God bless you. If those policies are there, it is part of official Secrets Act, which ordinary citizens do not know. So what are the policies? First, NDMA guidelines are there. National Disaster Management Authority guidelines are there. Second, Smart City project is there. We discuss all these things. As we said, in the Smart City project, we have mentioned that this disaster management should be an integral part of any smart city development plan. Then we also have AMRUT, Atal Mission for Rejuvenation of Urban Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. AMRUT was also there. Next, we also have National Urban Flood Risk Mitigation Project. National Flood Urban Risk Mitigation Project. Right? Again, all of them are part of Official Secrets Act. If you don't know, you can understand. You have to write all these things. Right? Next, India has a long and troubled border with China and Pakistan, fraught with contentious issues. Examine the conflicting issues and security challenges along the border. Also give out the development undertaken by under a Border Area Development Program and Border Infrastructure Management Scheme. Right? We have a long and troubled border with China and Pakistan. What are the reasons why we have this border issues? Why do we have these borders with issues with China and Pakistan? What are the reasons why? First and foremost, with China, this border issue goes back to independence days. What were the independence days? What are the problems at that point of time? Right? At that point of time, the problem was that China was not willing to recognize the border drawn by the Britishers. It was drawn by the Britishers. It was drawn by the Britishers. And China was not willing to recognize it. And another problem here is that the border was running through mountains, rivers, hills, forests. It was difficult to draw the line there. That is the reason why both India and China are having all the time border issues, because both of them are not willing to recognize the lines drawn by each other. Right? That is where the problem is. So let us look at the specific issues here. First, dispute regarding LAC, disputes related to LAC, line of actual control. Line of actual control. Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh. Arunachal Pradesh. Then, for India, LOC, line of control, along Kashmir, along Jammu and Kashmir, which is yet to be solved. And then cross-border terrorism. Then in recent times, in India, between India and China, this Galvan clashes, and ceasefire violations by China and Pakistan. And then next problem is China building its infrastructure near the border areas. Infrastructure, especially trying to relocate its population to border areas by converting them to villages in the disputed territories. Right? Then another problem is radicalization, especially in POK-occupied Kashmir, POK, radicalization. Then next problem is illegal drugs, as we discussed. Illegal drugs and counterfeit currency from Pakistan. It is said that Pakistan press is producing more qualitative Indian currency, better than RBI. Right? In fact, one of the reasons why we have opted for demonetization is to reduce counterfeit currency. Right? So, then what is this BADP? These are all very, school bookish like questions. Border area, development programs. Basically, even if you don't know anything, you can write everything. Anything you write will become right. BADP focuses on infrastructure development, roads, communications. Then, providing health centers to the people, livelihood programs for the border people. Our Prime Minister says, they are not called the last village, they will be called the first village. Border villages will be called the first village, not the last. And focusing on community welfare there. And then focusing on, reducing radicalization of young people there. Again, case study that we have discussed also. We are the DGP of a state. Reducing radicalization by providing them employment opportunities, creating infrastructure, ensuring integration of those sections of society, especially in Kashmir, into Indian Union. These are all the things that the government has done. So I think this is more than enough for this question. We have already discussed more than what is needed also. Right? So, next, social media and encrypting messages services pose a serious security challenge. What measures have been adopted at various levels to address the security implications of social media? Also suggest any other remedies to address the problem. Right? Again, we have discussed this as part of DPDP also. Right? Again, this question was asked in ethics case today, same question. You are the DGP of a state, radicalization of young people, same question. This is GS paper 3, not for GS paper 4. What you could have done for that ethics case today? Please refer to my answer 20 in GS paper 3. Same question, right? Same question. And you are writing the same answer. Do I need to dictate again? Not required, right? So this is what about all these things. We have left only 1 or 2 questions that also we can discuss. But science and technology, if I discuss, it doesn't look good, right? Otherwise, I said, what is the technology employed in electronic toll collection? This is a very straightforward, innocent, cute question. Yes. Any doubt? Yes. Question number 7. Yes. Yeah. What do you want? That is part of environment. As I said, if I touch, I have already answered some other questions related to environment. If I discuss science and technology environment also, next class onwards, you will say that to teach the entire syllabus. Right? And it is a very straightforward question. International pollution of river water is a significant environmental issue in India. Discuss the various mitigation measures to deal with the problem and also government's initiatives in this regard. Since there are no government initiatives, you don't have to write anything. You have to answer only the first part of the question. Right? Namami Gange project. Right? The government had spent huge amounts of money, and the money went down the drain of polluted Ganga. Right? So this is what it is, and tomorrow I think we have a public administration paper also is there. Maybe next week I will discuss PABAD papers also. And in GS paper 1, at least there are at least 7-8 questions which I can discuss, which part of social issues only, which we routinely study in this also. But I will discuss them some other day, these things. What are the questions that I can discuss in GS paper 1? In section A, I can discuss questions 8, 9, 10, then 17, 18, 19, 20. 8, 9, 10, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 13. 13, 17, 18, 19, 20, 5 questions I can discuss. Again, as I mentioned, First World War was fought only to ensure preservation of balance of power. That's what we have discussed yesterday also. These world wars were fought by the colonial powers, imperial powers, to retain control over their colonies. They will take statements from our class and right, ask them as a question. That too in history also. This is where the problem is. Right? Right. So we will discuss the public administration papers next week.